Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Transcription services provided by transcribeme.com. Visit them on the web at transcribeme.com/BeanCast for up to 25% off. That's transcribeme.com. Episode 508. Their mascot is a clown. For Monday, August 13th, 2018. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob North. Thanks for joining us. In the wake of Facebook's recent issues, YouTube's continued growth has positioned it to soon overtake the social giant as the number 2 most trafficked site online. So how concerned should Facebook be, if at all? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, brands co-opting feminist causes, whether content is tied more to search or social, accounting for binge watching in your ad buys, plus this week's Ad Fail 5. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with digital marketing expert and principal of Beetle Moment Marketing, Ms. Emily Binder. Emily, welcome.
Hi, Bob. Thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be here.
My pleasure to have you on the program, always. Now, next up, we have a founding partner of Brain Trust Partners and principal of Scott Monty Strategies. Mr. Scott Monty is here. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Bob. It's a pleasure to be back in your post-500 era.
I know. I've been doing this for way too long. And finally, we're pleased to welcome the Director of Marketing Communications at Cuisinart, Ms. Mary Rogers. Mary, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Well, look, we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to jump right into the topics. And first up, with Facebook dipping in usage and YouTube surging, experts claim that soon the video site will surpass the social giant in terms of popularity, which brings up a host of questions for me, Scott, most notably being, does this impact where we focus our ad programs going forward? Do you feel that this move from second place to third place will have negative impact on Facebook's ad potential and its revenue?
As always, Bob, you posed the most interesting and thought-provoking questions.
Well, thank you. I don't know whether to take that seriously or not.
No. It's absolutely true. And can you sense that it's the foot patter while I try and actually gin up a position here? Look, it's a matter of looking at overall digital budgets and seeing, how much they're expanding. I think we've seen a growing percentage year on year. And of course, the question is, what do you do with your budget given, limited options? And obviously, Facebook seems to be, in at least in the last 3 or so years, has been increasing exponentially in terms of ad spend. But the attention and the focus where we have the audience, I think is really interesting. And having a household with a couple of adolescents, I've actually got a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, and watching their viewing habits and their interactions online is really interesting because a couple of things are happening. One is they spend an inordinate amount of time on YouTube. All right, that's pretty much their option for television. And even when they get on TV, and we've got Hulu and Netflix and Amazon Prime and the like, they'll pull up YouTube videos on the TV system. So, they're really spending an awful lot of time on YouTube itself. With regard to Facebook, they're not on it. They're on Instagram, which is, of course, part of the Facebook network. And we've seen the rise of Instagram stories and more video content happening in Instagram. Video is clearly the future as far as the younger generation goes. And when you consider the way YouTube it presents its ads, you only have one option. It's one screen. With Facebook, there can be split attention. It can be in the news feed. It can be in the sidebar. It can be sponsored. It can be parts of stories. There's a lot of different ways to present your ads on Facebook. So again, it's not an either or kind of decision, but it's, how are you impacting the audience that is spending the most time on these sites? And when you look at the younger demographics, they are certainly spending more time with video content in general and more time with YouTube specifically.
Yeah, we talked a lot about that last week on the program about Gen Z and how the most popular social, quote unquote, social site out there for Gen Z is YouTube, which is really kind of eye-opening in terms of the growth patterns here. But when you read the articles, I mean, I like your measured approach to dealing with this situation. I mean, you're saying that there are some uses for each of the platforms. And I would agree with that. I think that everything has its place in the ad mix. But when you read the articles this week that were reporting on this news, it was almost like it was the apocalypse for Facebook. That somehow by being number 3 in the marketplace, it was somehow going to lose lots of our attention as far as ad spend and potentially put them in the toilet in terms of their ad revenue. Mary, do you believe that would be the case, or do you think that maybe things were a little bit overblown in the press and that Facebook continues to have a place that's important to us in our ad mix?
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that matter. One is, who is your customer, who's your audience, and where are they spending their time? And for us, there's that, for us, Facebook is really important, but we also use Instagram, we also use YouTube, we also use lots of different platforms. But I mean, I think that the thing with Facebook is because organic has pretty much gone by, doesn't exist anymore relatively. You have to spend money on Facebook in order to make, get any type of reach out of it. I don't think that it's going away. I think, yes, it's probably like most of the stories in the news now, they're very overstated or overblown. And, I think that every marketer has to decide what is best for the consumers that they're serving and the consumers that they want to bring into their brand family.
You bring up the word reach, and that's a really important word in all of this, because when you look at what YouTube's giving to the advertiser, it's giving pure play, old-fashioned reach and frequency. It's giving the opportunity to get in front of eyeballs and make an impression. Facebook has been used like that because it does have the biggest audience, or one of the biggest engaged audiences out there, but it's a much different engagement, isn't it, Emily? I mean, when you're actually working with Facebook, you've got a whole different mindset and a whole different engagement going on with your customer. So how do you balance between the two? Have we been using Facebook incorrectly by going for reach, and should we be focused more on a little bit more targeting with our ads on this platform?
Well, first, I think we should make sure that we understand what this rating is about. From what I got, it was the .com comparison, Facebook.com. It's not taking into account the entire ecosystem, including Instagram and the Facebook app, right?
I assumed it was taking into account all interactions on all the sites. So, I mean, yeah, it's probably not accounting for Instagram, because Instagram would be a separate site, just like YouTube is separate from Google. I mean, Google is obviously the number 1 traffic site as of this article, as of this writing, and Facebook is number 2, about to become number 3. So I would assume that it's accounting for all traffic on all mobile devices and on all desktops, but I could be wrong.
Right. Well, either way, Facebook.com obviously is slipping. I think that's a function of it being a desktop site or on a mobile browser. People are in apps. And The ecosystem, though, of Facebook isn't. And like Scott said, you have so many more options for placements. And I think they're more effective ads. And doing a YouTube ad is more difficult. It has to be so much stronger of an ad to get clicks, to get engagement, to not be skipped.
Mary, what do you think about that? I mean, it's just like I understand what Emily's saying. We've got a situation where YouTube has a captive audience and people are waiting for that little countdown timer to say, I can click off this ad all the time. So if you want to get engagement, you need to have some kind of special content. But is Facebook all that much more engaging and effective in its advertisements than YouTube?
I mean, I think it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. We use both, obviously. We focus on YouTube with their product that's called TrueView. So you only pay if the consumer is actually supposedly viewing it. We look at it as providing different types of content to our consumers at different times. We tend to use things like YouTube for more commercially present, more commercialized advertisements, where with Facebook, we're able to serve consumers a multitude of content. You could serve them, recipe content. You could serve them, contests. You can serve them things that are more relative to them as far as getting them engaged as a consumer. So we look at social media as more engagement. We look at things like YouTube as an advertising platform. Not that we haven't advertised on Facebook either, pure advertising.
And for me, that's the crux of the issue. I mean, they're very different platforms. So, I mean, the whole doom and gloom that somehow because Facebook is number 3, they're going to go down the toilet doesn't really float with me. There's still an important place for Facebook to be in the ad mix and to continue to add value to the advertising that we're doing. One interesting thing that came up in my mind when I was kind of preparing for this story was, up until Facebook Watch, I would have argued that the two platforms are radically different businesses. Facebook is very much a social platform and YouTube is a video content platform. But with Facebook Watch, does that overlap now make this news a little bit more important, Scott? Because if Facebook is losing traction at a critical juncture where they're trying to enter into video streaming in a big way, does that affect their future business plans?
Well, a couple of things, Bob. One, I think, Facebook is just getting beaten up right now, and folks just feel free to pile on. That there seems to be a chink in their armor that hadn't been there before, and people are just hammering away. So I think that's part of this news cycle that we're seeing, that folks are trying to dig at them in any given capacity. The other thing is, I think Mary's point is spot on. That YouTube is very much all about viewing. It really isn't about engaging. I mean, have you ever spent any time looking at comments under YouTube videos?
Yeah, it's completely a waste of your time.
It's a train wreck. Absolutely. So, to think of YouTube as a quote unquote social network, yeah, in the strictest sense it is, but there's really no useful dialogue. I mean, it devolves faster than Twitter, if you followed anything there. So, I think given that Facebook has consciously moved into putting video first, and back when I was at Ford, they made a very concerted effort to push us into posting more video. Initially it was post more images, and then a year or so later it was post more videos. This is the direction they chose to move, and certainly with mobile being so strong, video plays really well. When you couple that up with, again, what's going on with Instagram and Instagram's focus on video now, it all makes sense. So I think Facebook might see itself as being competitive with YouTube, but I don't think YouTube needs to feel any threat whatsoever. Nor do I think Facebook needs to worry about, declining relevancy, given the swath of options that they have for interaction with users and fans. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I saw that Facebook was focusing more on interaction and engagement and focusing the news feed more on what your friends and family see rather than simply whoever bought their way onto your news feed. So I think Facebook is absolutely doubling down on its social network status while trying to accomplish more via video.
It's interesting you bring this point up because this is another thing that I was thinking on when I was preparing for this particular topic. I mean, YouTube, does YouTube actually show more long-term vulnerability by not having the level of conversation and community connection that Facebook has? I mean, despite being the number 2 trafficked website pretty soon, and despite the fact that video is such a popular platform, such a popular form of online content, despite the fact that Google is giving extra juice to your videos in terms of search results and really bolstering that portion of the business. Is there lack of conversation around video? Is there lack of social engagement actually an Achilles heel, Emily? And do they need to worry about that?
No, I don't think so, because it's been so successful to this point and grown like crazy, maybe in part because it doesn't have all of that interaction and because the comments are full of trolls and you kind of know that when you go in there, and it is just an engagement viewing experience like Instagram used to be, when you would just look at photos and that was it. It was a discovery platform. And people spend time on YouTube. I mean, this is the platform rewards creators for not only having more minutes watched on a video, but keeping the user on the platform to watch more videos with a recommendation engine. So it does something so different from Facebook. And furthermore, I would put my eggs, if I were a content creator making video, in YouTube's basket, because it is part of, obviously, Google search ecosystem. And Facebook's days are numbered. We're all having this complete privacy concern melee. And, if you've ever tried a video app called Portal, which is a totally different model, I think that's actually the way things are headed. So currently,
so you really believe that Facebook is on the way out the door?
Within a few years, sure. Yeah.
Wow. I'm not sure that I agree with you. Anybody else agree with that? I mean, Mary, do you think that Facebook's out the door, or are they going to figure out some way to turn it around and still remain relevant?
I mean, they're, they're a huge animal right now. I mean, they have a huge presence. They are definitely getting beaten down right now. They have gone through some really tough times in the last few months. Do I think they're going to go away tomorrow? I don't think so. I think that they appeal to a certain type of consumer. I also think that for me, when you look at YouTube, I think of YouTube as an educational platform and an entertainment platform. I need to figure out how to fix a piece of luggage. I go to YouTube, I type in fix a piece of luggage, blah, blah, blah. And you get your answer. It's different than, searching for something on Google. You know that you're going to find videos that are going to tell you how to fix your problem. So I think it's like completely different platforms for completely different reasons, and they both have different strengths. I think that, yes, Facebook is obviously the social network, and I believe YouTube is more of, like I said, an entertainment content creation, a platform where you're going to become educated and entertained.
And Scott, any last words on this? Any last thoughts? I mean, do you think that Facebook's going anywhere?
No. and I'll take that bet with Emily.
No, I said in a few years. I'm not saying tomorrow. I'm not selling my Facebook stock now, but look at the way people are moving toward models where it's a person-to-person payment or it's freemium, and the content quality increases. So that's going to become more and more important because it's just getting so noisy, and the privacy concerns are, younger people don't like it.
And it has happened before. I mean, we've seen, as many people have said often on this program and out in the public square, that MySpace was once the king of social, and where is MySpace now? Yeah,
where's
absolutely.
Friendster? Where's Yahoo? Frankly,
they definitely have that possibility of going away. I just don't think that that's going to happen to them. I think that we've got Facebook for a long time to come. Maybe not at the dominant position it's always been, but potentially as an important player for years and years. I mean, especially considering their investments.
And look, they've got Instagram, they've got WhatsApp, they've got Messenger, they've got Facebook proper. If the government came along and wanted to regulate Facebook and break them up like so many Ma Bells, look, Facebook could still have 4 viable platforms on its hands standing alone.
Yes.
And maybe Facebook proper might fade away, and you see more of a focus on those standard messaging apps.
Yeah.
You're seeing a lot of people getting away from the public and more private one-on-one or one-to-few communications, which of course, as advertisers and marketers, that makes our job inordinately more difficult to interrupt these private sessions. But I think Facebook has a lock on the future no matter which way it turns.
Right. I was Facebook, the app, Facebook proper. No, Instagram, WhatsApp, sure. That's very valuable stuff. Let me clarify.
Well, moving on, American Eagle's Aerie brand recently ran a powerful campaign featuring Olympic gymnast Ali Reisman wearing a Survivor swimsuit, obviously in reference to the situation with the Olympic coach who abused her, which is bringing up a side issue of some note with some people. When is it okay for a brand to take up a cause like this, Mary, and when should we stay away? This is a really gutsy move for any brand to take up. There's nothing gutsy about standing up against sexual abuse. Obviously, that's a stand that we all can get behind. But to be seen as co-opting this is a potential huge liability for any brand. What makes this okay, whereas for another brand it wouldn't be okay?
Well, I feel like I'm stepping into a minefield, but I'll take it. Well, I think that basically you have to have this inherent in the DNA of the brand. Basically, it has to be a natural fit. It can't be attached to a brand that has a really long heritage, that has been around possibly for a super long time, that has no relevance to this subject matter. I think that being that it's a very, very, very risky thing to do, because of the subject matter, obviously. And I think that for brands, you have to think really long and hard about it, because if a consumer, they'll hammer you if they believe that you're trying to capitalize on a current cultural subject matter that is they know that you're selling on it, and I think that's where you have to be very, very careful.
Yeah,
I mean that's where the risk is.
I know it's you could have the best situation. You could be a brand that has been in this cause fights, situation for years and years and years. You're transparent and you're authentic about everything that you've done for this cause. And you can still get yourself in trouble just because someone out there in the mob mentality of Twitter decides that somehow they're offended by what you've done. And suddenly you're playing damage control instead of reaping the benefits of associating with this cause. And, I think back to all those brands thanking our fallen heroes on 9/11 and all the backlash that came from that. Scott, you've worked at a big brand. You've dealt with these issues on the social platforms. Is there ever a right time to take up a cause like this, in your opinion, or is this something that you would have stayed away from?
Well, I think Mary makes an excellent point that, what are you doing day to day? What does your brand stand for that would make it not look like such a knee-jerk reaction? Not look like some kind of, jumping on a trend reactionary approach, or even worse, make it something that is completely unrelated to your brand. I was just reading the latest Ronan Farrow expose. God help you if Ronan Farrow starts looking into your business. The latest one was about Les Moonves and CBS. And about 30 women saying that not just Les Moonves, but a number of executives throughout the CBS organization having this kind of, free, this sense that they could freely act toward women in a way that, we have come to realize is not to be tolerated. And at the same time, at the end of last year, just as the Me Too movement was really reaching an apex, Moonves became a prominent voice in the movement. He helped to found the Commission on Eliminating Sexual Harassment and advocating or advancing equality in the workplace. And you talk about a cognitive dissonance there, about completely antithetical to the way you ran your business and the way your corporate culture was and what you yourself did. That kind of thing just smacks of hypocrisy and opportunism, and maybe even self-preservation in some cases, rather than being something that sounds like it is part of the company's DNA or part of an executive's DNA. And people, they absolutely can see through BS, and they appreciate authenticity. And when the authenticity shines through, that's when a brand stands to benefit, not simply by jumping on a bandwagon.
And I think it's important for us to distinguish between cause marketing and lightning rod issue marketing, because what you're bringing up is at the heart of my conversation I wanted to talk about. And I'm going to go to Emily next with this. I mean, with a lightning rod issue like the Me Too movement or the Time's Up hashtag, and actually supporting and getting behind this issue, is authenticity enough? Is continued support and a history of supporting the issue enough? Or should these issues be actually only taken up if you have, say, an organization that is maybe a female-led company or has actually walked the walk in significant ways? Is that the only time this issue should be taken up by a company? Is when it actually represents the identity of the company?
Well, ideally, you would be doing something more than just showing that through your company culture and your hiring and other beliefs that you have, that you support it and you walk the walk. I mean, also donating to an organization associated with these causes, that would be better. It is a minefield, though.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's just like, yeah, from a logic standpoint, if your company is supporting feminist issues and has always been a very feminist-oriented company and has good hiring practices and good promotion practices, theoretically, that company should be allowed to do a program that supports feminist issues like the Me Too movement. However, in this particular environment, is it just opening up the opportunity for all kinds of potential backlash unless the company itself is maybe a female-led company or somebody who is so entrenched in feminism that there's no possibility of any kind of backlash coming back at them?
Well, if they are walking the walk, like I said, they shouldn't have a problem. If somebody starts looking up their skirt, like Scott was talking about with this investigator, and it turns out that they're not actually upholding these practices and creating a safe working environment, then it's a problem. But you shouldn't be too afraid to stand up for what's right. And if enough brands are on board with this, it makes everybody feel safer and it normalizes it, which is what we need.
Yeah, and that brings up another point, which is, does the issue itself need to be separated from the promotional practices? I mean, Mary, obviously, Aerie took it upon themselves to really embrace this in the form of an advertising program instead of maybe by doing a much more quieter campaign of actual, feminist causes and actually supporting feminist causes behind the scenes and actually walking the walk as opposed to promoting it. It seems like actually taking that step toward the promotional line or taking that step over the promotional line is the potential problem here. It's not the issue of actually supporting the causes, right?
No, I agree. The thing is that, they took somebody who was, a main, the person who has had a main testimonial in this situation with these girls, and she was actually almost acting as the spokesperson, the conduit, you know what I'm saying, just her presence. So I mean, I think that that's what made it strong, because she supported it. Where it's a lot different if a brand is trying to ride the coattails of something in a different way, where they're trying to capitalize something of the moment. And we've all seen this happen with brands, where they try to just get on the bandwagon because it's the thing at the moment and it's getting a lot of attention, and they want to, they want to ride it basically. I think it's a little bit different in a way, I think.
And that's a really, really good point. That idea that if you have the person who is actually being, at the center of the controversy, supporting your effort, that's a whole different animal, as opposed to just taking up the cause and riding the coattails, which is probably never a good idea in today's climate, especially considering the fact that Twitter will absolutely roast you alive if you make any kind of misstep in that process, and that's just going to cause you lots of headaches down the line. Well, moving on, I read a passably interesting piece about why social is important to your content marketing. It was obviously very self-serving, written by a social media expert, so there we have it. But it left me thinking that content is also just as much about search optimization as it is about social. And now, with increasing audience skepticism about social as a whole, Emily, which is the more important area to focus on, in your opinion? Do we need to refocus our thinking about content marketing and really double down on the search value that we're creating for the inbound traffic to the web site, or do we really need to amp up our social presence and use the content to feed our social discourse? Which is the more important thing for you, and how do we put together a mix that makes sense in today's climate?
Well, the most important thing is voice search. That's all you need. No, I'm kidding. But that's where the ball is headed. And these kind of articles focus on exactly what's happening right now. Where is the ball today? So it's important to kind of keep that in mind. To answer your question, though, I think you should be on both. But if you own your own house, it's always better than renting, i.e., if you're making content, at least have a copy of it on your own site. If it's a video, you need to have that somewhere, not just on Facebook or just on LinkedIn, because then you're giving your stuff to that other landlord, and that's dangerous because they might not be around for long. Like I said about Facebook earlier, nobody wants to believe me on that, but yeah, I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket.
Oh, most certainly. You don't want to have all your content on the social platform itself. I mean, it's obviously got to be a strategy that's driving traffic back to yourself, which is why this article was making such a big deal about the fact that you need to hone your social media skills. And you can't just create content without social supporting it and surrounding it. But I mean, given the fact that Google is the #1 traffic website and YouTube is growing and possibly supplanting the social impact of what's going on Facebook, and Twitter is a distant, also ran, you've got a situation where the search optimization seems to be the more important thing to worry about, right?
Right. Well, I've always thought of social as complementary or additive, or a way to share what you are doing on your own site or your own blog. It's a way to amplify it and share it, get more hits. And especially if you do it quickly and on the right days of the week, then you can hit this gold mine. But it's kind of a game, and it does take a lot of time and effort and essentially 24/7 monitoring, because you can have ad fails left and right. They're on the show every week.
And actually, I don't want to encourage people not to have ad fails, because, it's just like we've been getting pretty good and they're harder and harder to find. But love to have a little bit of mistake going on in the marketplace. Hey, Mary, what's the balance for you guys? I mean, how do you balance between the social value of your content versus the search impact value? And which is more important for you, and how do you balance between the two?
So we actually use a few social listening tools to actually drive what we actually produce for content. So we try to stay on top of the subject matters that are relevant to our brand, obviously. So just think recipes, cooking, entertainment. We actually do a lot of research before we actually produce the content. So this way that we're producing content that consumers would be engaged in, we have a higher chance of success. So, but what we do is we plan it out across all of our channels, social, web, digital, and we kind of knit everything together. We are in a much better place than some of our competitors because we're able to produce a lot of content both in and out of house. So that is a big help for us because one of the struggles in the durables category is marketers have a really hard time just investing and developing new content. And that's an area that we happen to excel in. So we use it across all platforms. We use, we develop a lot of video specifically, and that's something that we're really successful with. Our consumers are really engaged in, and we actually use it across all platforms.
And Scott, any thoughts from your end of things? I mean, you were known back in the day for being the social king. I know that that's kind of only a portion of what you do. You do so much more than that, but what's your thoughts on this? I mean, is social actually shrinking in importance or is still as important as ever as in your content game?
Well, I think it continues to hold some level of importance. I don't think it's everything. Um, I think what's happened over the last let's say 5 years or so is that there's been so much a focus on the technical side, on how can we better reach people, how can we maximize reach, um, how can we uh, how can we take the classic advertising and marketing practices and apply them to social. I think the thing that worked well for us at Ford is we got human beings out there interacting with people on social and sharing the content. So you had a combination of content marketing, of social interaction, not just by the brand, but by brand managers, by communications folks, by a lot of people personally, and that in turn drove up search results from a whole variety of areas. Not just the standard, going to Google and searching, but it might come through YouTube, it might come through forums, it might come off of social sites themselves. But you had this human element, the social part of social media, right? Not just that it's a social network, but that there are actual people socializing, having conversations, debating things, backing things up with good quality content, with fantastic videos or blog posts or whatever the content might be, to actually contribute to the conversation, which in turn fed the cycle for search. So, just to kind of reiterate what Mary and Emily said, it's not an either or, it's an all in, and it's doing the best you can in any of those scenarios you find yourself in.
Good points all. Last topic. If you're binge watching any ad-supported streaming content these days, you are undoubtedly familiar with the endless repetition of the same ad over and over again, episode after episode, same pod, repeating, which leads me to wonder, Mary, are we missing opportunities in storytelling and how can we take advantage of it? It seems that we're just running our TV commercials without understanding that people are there to watch maybe 7 episodes in a row, and we have an unprecedented ability to tell a longer story that can evolve over the course of, say, several hours.
Well, I mean, I think storytelling in advertising on a continuum is definitely, something new. I think that the big issue is holding marketers back is that now you're producing, super high quality content, more of it, more often. And I think that it's a budgetary choice, basically.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I mean, I'm reading this article, and kind of thinking about it, and it comes down to this is all a budgetary constraint that's keeping us from actually taking advantage of this tremendous opportunity. And I'm wondering, are we missing a really valuable resource just because we're not appropriately spending our money where it needs to be spent?
Well, I mean, I think that, I think about, myself, like if you want to produce the type of content that would align with that type of programming, it's high cost content. I mean, unless you have unless you get lucky and you find somebody who's like really great with an iPhone. I mean, the type of material that we run on those platforms are top of the line material. It's commercially produced. It's definitely, all in. And for me to be able to do that, 10 times for one season is not realistic, to be completely honest with you.
And that's a really good point. I mean, it's just like the budgetary constraints are real, and whether or not you really want to take advantage of the platform or not, you probably can at the level that you're used to doing, which is a reality for any kind of advertising. I mean, it's just like you can't get everything you want when you produced at the level that you want it to be. But Emily, your thoughts? I mean, is there an opportunity to maybe continue to maintain brand integrity and brand value at a level that's acceptable to both you and to your customers, while still making the messaging serial oriented and give the opportunity to create more content for this binge watching behavior that actually will be more effective in that environment?
There might be a way to do it affordably. I mean, to Mary's point, yes, if you had to do 10 times that ad, it gets to be cost prohibitive. What if you take the one ad or the two ads, variations of kind of the same storyline, and then did something creative like a crawl or a logo or a CTA that was cheap to just do an overlay, and it became part of this engaging, maybe taking them to a website or a landing page kind of thing? Or there are different creative ways you could go with it. Like you could do a blank screen that's silent to get their attention, and the next one, the ad rolls. I don't know. But as somebody who, when I watch I have Hulu Premium, whatever it's called, and I see ads, I am annoyed. I mute them. I go do something else. But I don't hate the brand. I'm not angry. I just, okay, there's a commercial. I don't think there's this vitriol that viewers are so annoyed they have to see the same ad so many times when they're binging. I don't think it's that big a deal.
I don't know. From my own personal experiences, I feel like it's a totally missed opportunity, but it's also a complete annoyance every time I see this same ad coming in pod after pod, time after time. It just gets annoying after a while. Scott, anything that you can add to this conversation? I mean, it's just like, is storytelling via the binge watching platforms, is it really that much of an opportunity, or is it something that we're just kind of making too much about? And actually, as long as you're getting reach and frequency, it's still going to give you the value that you came to get in the first place.
Well, first of all, Bob, thank you for the segue right when you hit the "it's so annoying" part. Perfect cutaway to me. No, I think you hit on the crux of it, at least as far as I'm concerned, when you said storytelling. We spend so much time saying marketers, advertisers, communicators, we're all storytellers. And yet, are we really? Are we really telling stories, or are we really just blurting stuff in front of people that we want them to see? Because to me, if you're telling a story, it's something that has an arc. And if you understand your audience and what they're doing, and you want to reach them in a relevant way, then you should be able to take that arc and engage them, even if it's just 3 spots over the course of binge watching, and they see the same story with 3 spots 5 times. That's fine because I have the same experience as Emily on Hulu Plus, and it's even worse because I get Spanish ads every once in a while that has nothing to do with anything I've selected in Hulu or my profile. I don't speak Spanish. I mean, I understand it, but there's no reason I should be receiving Spanish language ads. And I've tweeted to the brands that play these commercials over and over and over again. And I say, look, you're wasting your money because I'm not your target audience and I'm seeing the same ad. And it does become annoying after a while. And I simply tune it out versus, hey, if there was something that was a cliffhanger, if there's something that left me wanting to know what happened next when the brand came up, keep me on the edge of my seat rather than keeping me, from ignoring it.
Right. Create curiosity.
Well, good points all, but it's time now for the AdFell 5. Before we get to that segment of the show, though, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Emily Binder. You can find her at BeetleMoment.com. That's the home of Beetle Moment Marketing, her consultancy out of Austin, Texas. Tell us, Emily, what's going on in your world? What would you like to promote?
I want to talk about voice search.
Yes, I figured you would.
So smart speakers are the fastest growing consumer technology since the smartphone. And by 2020, screenless browsing is expected to account for 30% of browsing. 50% of searches will be conducted through voice. That's less than 2 years away. So voice is changing the way people search for and find brands to interact with. If you want to improve your customer experience and drive more traffic to your site and stay ahead of the competition, you need a voice strategy now in 2018. And with voice, there is no search engine results page. There's just one top result, and you need to be it. So I help brands optimize for voice search. I develop branded ALEXA flash briefings and podcast skills. So reach out to me if you want a great parking space at Wally World an entire day before the crowds arrive. You can go to BeetleMoment.com. It's Beetle with 2 E's. Also, bonus fun, if you search Amazon under Alexa skills for the Beetle Moment Marketing Podcast skill, you can make it play by saying, Alexa, play marketing podcast. Yes, hashtag land grab, and I can help you do the same. Back to you, Bob.
And here I go with the next amazing person here on our panel, Scott Monty. You can find him at scottmonty.com. That's the home of Scott Monty Strategies. Tell us what's going on in your world, Scott. What would you like to promote?
Well, Bob, I am sitting down with lots of brands and agencies hosting executive briefings. If you would like to sit down with me for 90 minutes, a half day, a full day, have a prepared presentation about the state of the market, whether it's social, digital, AI, privacy, whatever floats your boat, we can discuss it and nail something that, quite frankly, saves you the time and effort of sending your team out to various conferences and other learning opportunities that are pretty high price propositions. So feel free to visit scottmonty.com and check out the executive briefings there under the speaking section. I'd be happy to come and drop in with you. And quite frankly, if you book me for these executive briefings, you get free bat phone access to me for up to a month after our session. So my brain at your will.
Oh man, do you have the spotlight? That's what I want to know. I want the bat spotlight. And last but not least, Mary Rogers. I am so glad I ran into you at the MMA event several months ago, and I'm so glad you came on the program today. You can find more about her and her work at Cuisinart at Cuisinart.com. You should know about Cuisinart. It's a very popular brand out there among people who are cooking. So tell us, what's in your world, Mary? What would you like to promote?
Well, I mean, besides Cuisinart, I mean, I thought it would be interesting to just for a few minutes talk about something that is on the minds of most marketers right now, marketing technology. Beyond voice and a few other things, this is an area that is completely changing the landscape of business. It's changing our business dramatically, whether it's, content marketing platforms, whether it's direct to consumer, which is certainly on the rise. There are a lot of things in the technology field that are changing the way that marketers do business on a day-to-day basis. And obviously, that's impacting our brand. It's giving us the ability to get our product to the market much faster, to get into our retailers' hands and on their web properties much faster. So it's an area that I think a lot of marketers are spending much more time on than in the past. You have to be kind of an expert in tech and also traditional marketing practices. And with that, of course, I have to say, I love Cuisinart. I've been there for 22 years. I just had my anniversary on Friday.
Fantastic. Congratulations. Yeah, it's a.
Mary, just out of complete coincidence, I fired up the Weird Al song this morning. Gonna buy me a condo, gonna buy me a Cuisinart.
Oh, I love that.
As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And don't forget, you can now get transcription services of each and every episode right on my website, and it's from transcribeme.com. Go to transcribeme.com/BeanCast. They got a special offer for BeanCast listeners. If you need transcription services, they're the ones to go to. Transcribeme.com/BeanCast. And now it's time for the Ad Fail 5, a rundown of the lowest moments in marketing, advertising, and public relations from the last week. And first up, Airbnb was running a promotion where winners would enjoy a night of food and music on the Great Wall of China, Scott. It sounds like a really great prize. I really wish I could have done it, except the locals didn't really get on board with it. They complained, and suddenly Chinese officials claim that they never had a permit for this event in the first place. Suddenly, Airbnb has to pull the plug on the whole thing before anybody gets to spend the night on the Great Wall of China. This one seems like it was an avoidable mistake, but you never know with the Chinese.
Well, you don't. Clearly, they built a wall, and they're going to make Airbnb pay for it.
Very well played. Now, next up, the iPhone risks being pulled from India because Apple, despite all their efforts to let us block everyone else's ads there, Emily, they refuse to install an app to block every ad, including their own, to be in compliance with Indian law. This one seems like it's, I don't know who to say this ad fails on, whether it's the Indian government for forcing this or it's just Apple for not being willing to put this app on their phone that blocks all advertising. But it seems like it's an avoidable problem in some way.
Yeah, I agree. Apple only has 1% market share in India, which is obviously a lot of people, but maybe it's not worth the headache. And it costs $1,400 to get an iPhone 10 there. Like, it's probably just not the best market at this time.
Yeah, probably not. Now, the Academy Awards, in an effort to shore up shrinking TV ratings, decided to add a popular film category, Mary, which they proudly tweeted about. To which the internet responded with all the snark it had, making fun of this new category, which is basically like the most popular film of the year.
I don't know what they were thinking. Basically, I mean, you cannot go on Twitter and not have your game put together. Obviously they're losing ratings. I believe they're also shortening the programming. They're making it earlier. They are trying everything they can to, increase the ratings. But, when you go on Twitter and you don't have your game together, you're definitely going to get hammered. And they did. And they put it out there and they got served.
It seems like they should have done maybe a little bit more focus group testing. Well, next up, Jeremy Pincus. This one's horrible. This is a horrible. I'm just going to say this right from the start. Jeremy Pincus, a VP at Isobar, was arrested for taking pictures of women on his train, Emily, gyrating his groin at them, and then following them off the train. Basically, typical agency behavior, if you will. But, I mean, this is just horrific what this guy did. And he was arrested in the conference room at his own agency.
Aren't you embarrassed? How on earth do you think this will go unreported? Maybe he was trying to get fired.
I can't imagine. Well, I can't imagine the drive to do this kind of behavior, but it happens. It happens an awful lot, as we're hearing over and over again from the Me Too movement. So we just have to get it stopped in some way.
I love how he collected the evidence against himself.
Yeah,
yeah.
he really did. And last but not least, fast food chain Jack in the Box takes the cake for Tone Deaf Ad of the Week with an ad talking about big bowls in a work setting. But to make things worse, and this is where it really gets weird, Scott, the ad ends with a self-aware bit where a lawyer tells Jack that they can't do this ad, and then to fail even harder, the agency and the client fell on their sword defending the ad after all of this, saying that they felt it was completely legitimate. I'm like, ball jokes do not play well, especially not in a work setting, especially not in your advertisements.
There's a reason the Jack in the Box logo is a clown.
I guess so. We'll have some.
I think they should apologize for being so uncreative. Like bowls and balls sound the same. That was the winning idea.
Maybe they should hire Jeremy Pincus.
Yeah, we'll go there next.
Yeah, at least he can shoot it on an iPhone, which takes care of Mary's concern of being too expensive for producing lots and lots of commercials. So I think we've got a winner. Jeremy, call us. Well, have something to add to this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag AdFail5. That's pound AdFail and the number 5. Well, that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an iTunes listener, we've also provided a direct link to the iTunes Music Store, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory of iTunes. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. It's just like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.